I am so beyond excited to be joined by some of the most amazing panelists. A quick little introduction of myself. As Mila said, Ben Pechey, my pronouns are they, them. I'm a white person with wonky blonde hair with a very busy background. You can see copies of my debut book, The Book of Non-Binary Joy, which obviously I won't be talking about very much, with a bold green wallpaper. And it is my massive pleasure to welcome my other panelists, Chloë, Eva, and Geff. I'll let you all introduce yourself one by one, starting with Chloë.
Hi everyone, it's lovely to see some very familiar faces too in Chosen Family. My name is Chloë Davies. My day job is Head of Social Impact for Lucky Generals, which is a creative agency. Descriptor, I have Albany, dark roots hair, I'm Black, I'm a cisgender woman, I'm wearing a sleeveless grey dress, and my pronouns are she, her.
Hi everyone, my name is Eva Echo. My pronouns are she, they. I'm a trans woman of East Asian origin. I have long black hair, I have neck tattoos, and in the background you can see my logo, which is a panda on a rocking horse against the trans pride flag colours. I am head of communications and engagement for Birmingham Pride, and I sit on the Crown Prosecution Service's hate crime panel.
Good morning, everyone, and good afternoon if you're in somewhere else. Good evening. It's a great pleasure to be here, and like Chloë, it's lovely to see so many familiar faces and also to see so many new ones, which is really heartwarming that we're getting the message out there. So I'm Geff, as I say. My pronouns are he, him. I'm a white cis man. I identify as gay, and I'm based in London. I'm currently in my bedroom. But from a few weeks' time, I'm going to be splitting my time between London and Vancouver in Canada because my husband is Canadian. He's currently over there doing some wonderful things in our apartment. I'm trying to make it look nice. In terms of a day job, until the end of February, I was a managing director at Macquarie Group, where I was very proud to take them to #1 in the Stonewall rankings that were just announced a couple of weeks before that. And at the end of February, I retired from financial services to set up my own diversity, equity, and inclusion consulting service organization called theinclusionimperative.com. So if you want to go and check that out, that's a little plug from me. Looking forward to the conversation.
Thank you all so much for showing up authentically this morning. It also feels like Eurovision when we're doing around the world greetings as it comes up this weekend, that the irony is not lost on me. I would love for a lengthy time delay, too many dresses and some awkward jokes, but no, we will be discussing being the change. And I think it's a great sort of starting point to look at the pressure that we all hold and the expectations. And so I'm going to come to you first, Chloë. What pressures and expectations do you have to navigate as a role model in a position of leadership, which we all are, especially during Pride season, that's what we're thinking about today? And how do you show up for yourself as well as your community, your intersection, as part of that pressure?
That's a very big question. It's do you know, when we did this in the briefing, it didn't sound as big as this. I'll be honest, I'm still working that out. I don't have the clarity. Every year I think I know what I'm going to come towards, and then it completely changes. I'll say that Pride season overwhelms me like no one's business, and I'm actually quite nervous for this one, the first one going back physically being together after 3 years. So I always do what feels comfortable for me, which is to lean into community, to find, those people that uplift me and heal me, but also that give me the space to be a leader. I'm not really comfortable with the word leader or role model. I'm just trying to make a difference for my 14-year-old self and my kids. So I think that's how I just navigate through, is what would I have wanted to see, what would have helped me, and to kind of just share best practice with that. But it's not, I won't lie, it's not easy. So I feel like just being able to have other people that look like myself, being surrounded by that, but also my chosen family, who are some of whom are here today, like actually having other people within this community space to uplift me. And to be able to share best practice, but also to collaborate together and create magic. That's how I navigate through Pride season, but also how I navigate being a queer leader in general.
Yeah, I really like the idea that, you realize that you're not on your own. And I think it's important to lean into that. And Eva, you're someone that really rallies for the community. The same question, I'd love to hear your approach.
Yeah, I mean, when Pride season comes around, I always feel quite a lot of pressure. A pressure to know it all. You know, people look up to you, and like Chloe was saying, I'm not really that comfortable with like role model or leader. I prefer just like someone who's got privilege and maybe more of a platform than others. But then again, you know, with that, regardless of a label, with that comes a lot of pressure. People look up to you, people come to you, and there's this pressure to kind of almost have all the answers. And I don't. I mean, I never set out to be an activist. I never set out to create change. I am winging it. I'll tell you this, you know, like 4 years, 5 years on, I am still winging it. And I guess that's where we have to lean into each other. We have to kind of nurture each other and, you know, move forward into and through Pride season together, supporting each other. There's a lot that goes on online, on social media, but it's also worth checking in with each other offline as well, making sure that we're all doing okay. Nobody's feeling too overwhelmed, and to kind of pick people up.
Yeah, I really enjoy the fact that so many of us are here because our work has pushed us to this point. No one ever set out. We didn't wake up and go, I'm an activist. Like none of us have done that, but we're all sitting on top of projects, of communications, of amazing things that we've done. And we're here now, and that responsibility has kind of been given to us. I think, Geff, it's a really good point to come to you. All the work you've done, I'm sure there was intention, but also maybe there was another thing at work there with you. I'd love to hear your take on the question.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. Thanks, Ben. It's. I mean, obviously, I'm coming at this historically, at least from a corporate background, and trying to make organizations agents of change, because I genuinely believe that they are the people that, well, you know, the instruments of change. We shouldn't be relying upon governments to do this. So, you know, trying to be that voice inside out, and quite often feeling that, you know, you're seen as that gay guy or that strange person wandering around the trading floor and not talking about football and not pretending that had 10 pints and you know, however many conquests with their girls the last weekend. It's challenging, and you know, you do need to find support wherever you can. And particularly this time of year, I mean, from a, you know, we're coming up to Ida Hobbit, it's a sort of an oil slick from Ida Hobbit through Pride season of about 6 weeks of frantic activity where, you know, as Chloe and Eva have said, I mean, everyone expects you to be all things to all people and to know everything. And we're all just basically fighting, you know, a constant battle. Particularly, I find in a corporate context, this whole trend that's really been picking up the last few years of corporate pinkwashing and you know, just slapping a rainbow on it just really gets my goat. And because it you know, if it's not really talking about year-round inclusion and making really good systemic changes around practices, policies, cultures based upon cultural intelligence and the lived experiences of people who are actually going through this, then it's just tokenistic, it's just performative. And you know, you've got to be, you know, all day, every day, the person fighting against that and say, look, it's not just good enough to change your logo into a rainbow. What are you actually doing to support your staff and other people outside outside these walls? And you know, that's a constant challenge. I mean, from my perspective, it's really just a question of checking in. I'm very lucky, you know. I've already mentioned my husband. I managed to get a plug-in for him. I've been married for 18 years. He is extremely supportive of the time I spend doing this stuff, because it matters to me. And also, I tend to take a lot of not, you know, support, my individual support from the community and charity work I do for people like Give Out and Pride and Tennis. I think that's important to be seen to be giving back rather than just always thinking about, well, this isn't benefiting me. It was never about me, but you know, just in case you think it is, step up and help others.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point of knowing who's there for you and also what role you play in helping others and not just you. And also, like, big shout out for marriage. If you want to get married, that might help. It might not. It might be for you. I think there's another aspect of this question, and it's dealing with the less fun side. And I always draw from my own experience whenever I, you know, come into a moderator session. Trigger warning, I am going to talk about transphobia. I am on the run up to publishing my book next week, and I have seemingly this week algorithmically been swallowed up into turfland. The abuse I've been receiving has been really terrific, to the point where I don't know how to move through this ignorance. My role as an author, as a leader, but I'm a person too. And I really want to sort of look to all of us here. We deal with this multi-layered ignorance. Sometimes it's lack of education, sometimes it's bigotry, sometimes I think, you know, especially I think Eva and myself, it will be someone who has come for a specific hashtag just to pour vitriol on our content and our day. How do you deal with that? What advice would you have to others? Because it's a big part, especially for trans people and intersectional communities. We deal with this every day. I'd love to come to you, Eva. How do you deal with this ignorance? If we call it ignorance, what would your approaches be?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen some of the stuff that you've been bombarded with, Ben, and I'm just shocked that people have that hate in them, let alone have the time, because it's just constant. Like, get out there, see the world, do something with your lives that's not just Twitter based. But yeah, I mean, I can completely, you know, relate to that. Following the update on our legal case against NHS England going to the High Court, bombarded with DMs, you know, like you're being selfish, you're doing this, you're taking money away from NHS, blah, blah, blah. And most of the time I don't bother responding. You know, it's a case of looking at the bigger picture, remembering why you're doing this, why we put ourselves out there in such a visible way. If there's a chance to perhaps educate, maybe think about, is it safe for me to do that? Because your safety comes first and foremost. Is it safe for me to try and, you know, at least try and educate this person? But then also I like to weigh up, is it worth it? Is this person just out for the hate? If so, what's the point? You know, they're just one of thousands of tweets. It's so insignificant. And there's a lot of pressure sometimes to, you know, to have to be able to deal with these, to answer every single message from trolls. And it's kind of taking you back and saying, you know what, I'm not going to bother today. I'm just going to switch it off and ignore you. And that will wind them up even more. And it's having that, they're having those boundaries really, and sharing those boundaries with others, because we all have different experiences. And whilst we may not understand the intersectional experiences of others, we need to be mindful that, you know, the pressures, the hate can become overwhelming, and just to be there for each other.
No, I think boundaries is such a beautiful message, because you don't have to be on all the time. Certainly, you know, you have to take time for you. I think it's interesting because we're coming from a very personal, this is our life kind of, but Geff, you probably have had to deal with ignorance in a corporate setting. How would you, because there may be people here that are the DE&I lead or a volunteer role in their corporation, how do you deal with that ignorance in that kind of setting?
Well, I mean, thanks for actually putting that way, because that is a very important issue. I mean, Eva's really just called out the issues perfectly. So I'm going to sound a bit like an echo chamber on that. But you know, I'm a great believer in engagement, because however unsavory people's views are, ultimately we do need to change a few hearts and minds to bring the needle back in our direction. You know, there is a horrible groundswell of hate out there towards the trans community right now, which, however appalling we all find it, you know, 101%, you know, fully on board as an avid trans ally, there are going to be people out there who are reachable, and there are going to be people who are not. And you know, the latter crew, well, to your point, Eva, is it worth it? No, it's not. But in the former crew, it is, and the challenge is to find them. And a few years ago, I was organizing a trans awareness event, and quite late in the organization period of that, I was asked to materially change that event because a couple of people had jumped up and said, I'm not comfortable with this subject matter. And I was really, really disappointed by that. But what disappointed me most was the fact that the people who were saying that were faceless. I could not find them within the organization. They were not putting their hand up and saying, I would like to talk about this. They were just taking pot shots. That meant I couldn't engage with them. I couldn't try to educate them. I couldn't find out where they were coming from. And I needed to do that. And I couldn't, and I felt like a complete failure. So I went ahead with the event, managed to do it in a way which, you know, didn't put too many noses out of joint, but still push the limits, because that's what I'm all about. But you know, for about 3 years afterwards, I was trying to find who should I be talking to here? There is a faceless groundswell. And unfortunately, I think this is probably true within most organizations, that you you'll find people who just say, look, I don't believe in this. I'm not going to engage. All I'm going to do is, hunker down in my little sort of hate bunker and chuck rocks at you. And honestly, I haven't found a solution to that yet. It's really just about trying to find ways to educate people. But here we are talking, preaching to the converted. No one like that is probably going to be dialing in this morning unless they want to be here to chuck hate crime in, which isn't going to be helpful either. So anyone's got any better ideas about how to do that in a corporate environment? I don't have all the answers to the point we were saying earlier, and I'd love to find better ways to get that done.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting that it's not just an approach. It's not just one set of resolutions. I'd love to hear from you, Chloë, how that shows up in your work role responsibility. I mean, we've called it ignorance, but perhaps it's just lack of experience.
I mean, it's really, as I'm listening, it's a really interesting one from the different perspectives. And I guess if you'd have asked me this question, even when we did the briefing 2-3 weeks ago, I would have probably gone more along the lines with what Eva and Geff saying. I absolutely, truly believe that there is a sweet spot, as I've now imprinted from advertising, there's a sweet spot between, where the work is truly necessary, where there's those people that you can reach, where there are people where you make the decision to choose to just not engage, it's not worth it. And then for me, I think I'm falling into the sweet spot, which is that very big word of boundaries, but also no. There are some people where you have to put the boundary of saying enough is enough. Absolutely. And actually, we need to stop this. And to be honest, it's a really difficult conversation because that place is actually within our own community. It's where we're having that question alongside, how do we uplift each other and really truly be allies, really truly disrupt by saying no to, where we're seeing things that are happening to you, Ben, and actually it's for us as the allies and in community to be that rallying voice for you to not have to deal with those things. I think it's very much talking to that, which is something that we don't do particularly well. So I'm an absolute believer in the work and actually changing hearts and minds, but I think there have to be elements where you are a bit more radical, where you are a bit more forthright, where the boundary is louder, because I think that in the trying to be, my mantra is keep it cute. In the trying to keep it cute, sometimes you do yourself a disservice by not setting the right boundaries. Sometimes you lull people into a false sense of security to believe that they can disrespect you or they can speak out of turn because, you're just training everyone, you understand, you're one of us, and there is no one of us, it's all of us or none of us. And so that's where I'm very much about, we have to get back to reminding clearly people about this in a professional way, in a personal way, in an advocate way, whether, like we all do here, we all choose to do that in our volunteer work. We all choose to do that in the passions that we kind of fulfill and amplify ourselves in the day jobs and the gay jobs, whatever you refer to. But I think we also need to be better in having those very clear boundaries, because I think if we did as a community, we'd be much stronger. And as leaders, it's not something that we're taught. We're so passionate about being the change, so passionate about doing the work. And there isn't like one book that says this is how you lead or this is how, but there is some basic rules that maybe if we talk to each other a bit more, we would be better at doing this, but also we would know in times of deep struggle where communities have asked for support, and it hasn't always been heard, and allies have come. It's a bit like, Thundercats and the light goes out into the world, that we can see that unspoken, that we can understand that through nuance, and it doesn't always have to be, verbal. It can be in our businesses and in so many other ways. But I think that shared community for me is really absolutely got to be integral to how we do this work.
Well said.
Absolutely. And I think, today, this summit is a really good example of coming together, having those conversations, really understanding that everybody's experience is going to be a little bit different based on where they've come from, what they do, their approach. And you're right, when we had the briefing for this, it's not how I thought this would have gone. And I'm really enjoying that differing experience. And I think thinking about the multi-layered ignorance, the brick walls that we come up against sometimes in our day-to-day interactions, that, you know, when we signed on, when we booked that email, we're like, yes, I really want to do it. But when it comes to that D&I session, when it comes to that call, and there's a scary woman called Lisa telling me that she would want to use a slur, it's scary, and your confidence gets knocked. I think how we deal with confidence, self-doubt, and, you know, this, as you would say, Chloe, buzzword, imposter syndrome. How do we approach that? How do we deal with this? I'd love to come to you first, Eva. Award winner. Yes, I did see that. Everyone should applaud Eva's amazing achievements. But what does that feel like when doubt, self-confidence, imposter syndrome? How does that show up for you? How do you navigate that?
Thank you. Thanks, Ben. Do you know what? I was hoping no one would mention that. I mean, that in itself is imposter syndrome. I remember kind of walking up to the stage and thinking, what do I say? I shouldn't be here. There are people out there who deserve this more. And I guess I've always lived with imposter syndrome. You know, back then it didn't have a name. It's just a feeling. And even right now, you know, sharing a panel with you, Ben, Chloe, and Geff, it's like, wow, you know, sharing a panel with three amazing people who are doing fantastic work. And here's me just winging it for the last 5 years. And I think it comes back to that pressure, because we don't know it all, because there is no activism 101. There's no formal qualification. The only thing we have is our passion. And, you know, my activism, the work that I do is rooted in my lived experience. And that's all I can go on. That's my ammunition. That's my drive. But I also recognize everybody has a different drive. Everyone has a different lived experience. And it's, you know, undoubtedly we're going to compare ourselves. Is what I'm doing harmful to others? Is it good enough? Others have a different lived experience. You know, maybe they're the ones who should be doing this instead. And it's recognizing all of that. And I guess that's how I try and deal with it. I can't say it works 100% of the time, but it's recognizing that I'm not the only one. I'm doing the most and the best that I can at any given point, and to kind of just remind myself that's okay. You know, I'm not here to change things for everyone. I'm just here to turn up and play my part in this massive fight that we're all embroiled in, and we all have the right direction in our gaze. So taking that step back is huge. Sometimes we don't give ourselves enough time to take that step back and think about what we've actually achieved. I'm still reeling from a lot of stuff, but I guess I'll just carry on winging it and see what happens.
Yeah, I really enjoy that. And I quite often I'm in rooms with people and I'm like, someone is going to tell me, no, Ben, you can't be here. You don't have the qualifications. And when I think of like that business acumen, Chloë Davies, I think of you, and I think of how much you do and your impact in how I've changed what I do from seeing your work. How does that show up for you? Because I'm sure you must have days when you're like, I don't feel like being Chloë Davies today. What does that look like for you?
Please, that's every day. I keep it real and 100. It's every day. I mean, my really good friend Shiva will know this. I'm like, imposter syndrome is real. Like, I need my little pep squad. I think there's something in this, and particularly through LGBT queer gays, where imposter syndrome really does a number. It's like this, I call them influencers, I'm really sorry, but like this need to like be seen. I hate it. I'm not doing this for accolades. I'm not doing this for, although super props to you, Eva, and with no disrespect, but I'm not doing it for any of that. I'm just doing it because it matters and it drives me. So when anyone says like, oh, you know, Chloe, and I'm like, no, the cheeks, it's too much. And so I get really nervous. Doesn't matter where I'm speaking. I get really nervous. I need the like little pep in. I need to like, do you know, when I said I was going to get some water, I actually did a little breathing exercise and then I came back. I think it's this thing of like imposter syndrome is what you see outside and the realities of people are just two completely different things. Like I'm not that cool in my own head. Like I'm really awkward.
Oh.
Not that cool. And so when it's like not about the high heights and actually about the work, and I think imposter syndrome for me gets balanced out by being around the right people. I think for a long time, I associated myself with people that I thought were good for me, but actually really weren't. And so, especially in this world of queer identities, queer leadership, we also align ourselves sometimes with the wrong types of people, not because they're not community, but actually we're not all in it for the right reasons. And I feel like I've become a better leader, role model by aligning myself with people who are really, truly in it for community, and everything else gets quiet. So I'm more intentional now about how I show up on social media. I'm more intentional about what I'm talking about and should I actually be talking about it. Whereas when I first started, I was like, I'm in this really big space. I can talk about everything because I've got this right. Like I believe that I have this right, and you have to earn it. Respect isn't just you have to earn it. And especially when we speak on behalf of community, I have to earn that respect for all the different communities that I speak on. So if anything, I'm only as good as the people that I immerse myself in and around with, and that have entrusted me to do this. And I just have to keep honoring that. And I think that is, you know, because I mean, the first time that I met Geff, I was like, it's like Geff from Corey. But you know what I mean? Like I still fangirl I actually still fangirl everyone on this call. So I'm not even sure why I'm like, yeah, okay, I'm done now.
That's incredible. And I think the fact that, you know, we're sat here, we've been given this opportunity, but also we're crumbling inside. I have things that I rely on that really help me. The fact that I'm so anti-corporate, the fact that I look sometimes a little bit ridiculous. I put on my makeup, I put on my lipstick. I can hide behind this. I'm playing a role. I am the Lorraine Kelly of the queer community. I really have two people. There's business me, and then there's public face me. But really, thinking of your experience, Geff, you can't do that in your experience of the corporate world. How do you deal with the doubt and the self-confidence, or were you just a boss throughout it and were like,
no one is. I mean, that's the thing is I spent
exactly
35 years in financial services, and there wasn't a single day of those 35 years when I wasn't kind of expecting a tap on the shoulder saying, we found you out, you don't know what you're doing, you shouldn't be here. Everybody kind of just expects that, and you know, somewhere along the line, luckily it never happened, but you don't ever lose that self-doubt. And I mean, and that was just like, was my day job. And if you think about my gay job, you know, as a white, cis, middle-class, middle-aged, well-educated man, you know, I get imposter syndrome about this as well. I mean, notwithstanding the fact, your comment, Chloe, which I love, thank you very much to have that as a fan, that's wonderful. But you know, do I have the right to speak for the community with all of those that privilege that I've just listed? I mean, you know, that's something I kind of like have to deal with every day. And the way I deal with it is to try to remind myself that every experience is valid. You know, it really is. I mean, okay, my experience is going to be very different to a lot of other people's. I can't pretend to be fully understanding of those with different characteristics to myself, but it's my job to lean into that and understand that, you know, the perspective that I bring as someone who is old enough to have been born in this country when it was still illegal to be gay, have lived through the Section 28 experience, etc. You know, all of those things just remind me that, and gives me acute awareness, which perhaps young people don't, of where we've come from and where we might go again if we're not guarding against backsliding. But I do need to try in that regard to empathize and step up and do more around empathy, because it's work. You know, I need to make sure I do make the effort to understand. And, you know, empathy means seeing something from other people's perspective, not my own sort of like nice middle-class white cis perspective of convenience and coziness. I'm always reminded of that wonderful song everybody will know by Aretha Franklin, R-E-S-P-C-T. If everyone thinks about the next line after she sings R-E-S-P-C-T, she says, find out what it means to me, which is basically, you know, tell me, you know, you put yourself in my shoes, know what I need to do to be respected, And it's my job to step up to do that, to really, earn everyone's respect through the empathy that I would deliver, rather than just, my set of privileged characteristics.
Yeah, that's a really important point. And I think just to round out this question, it's Mental Health Awareness Week. My therapist told me this week that I have to give as much energy to myself as I give to everyone else. And I would really like to hear from you what you do in regards to mental health, imposter syndrome, just maintenance beyond, the usual crap that we hear, like having a bath and stuff like that. But what does that look like? Whoever wants to jump on, shoot.
I'm laughing. Therapy, yes. Paying for the privilege. She's amazing. Thank you. My friends, and actually just having like dinners and getting together and being around each other and existing. I think that's the thing. I don't always exist. I kind of just coast. And so trying to thrive and understanding what that means and being selfish for myself, which is not really something that I'm very comfortable with, but I'm learning that I need to for the responsibilities that I have. It will always be community. And also I'm learning to treat myself more, which is I'm not comfortable with, but
no, it's good for you. Selfishness is self-love, so it's true.
Yeah. And my last one, spa trips. That's my new thing. It's my new thing. I'm not gonna lie. I like the bougie life, yeah.
What about you, Geff?
It's however you do need to find ways to do a little bit of pampering, probably too strong a word, but you just make yourself feel better. Actually, I shouldn't say this. I'm quite lucky this week because my husband is away. I can be an absolute self-indulgent person and do what I want all day, which apart from doing a lot of this sort of stuff, which actually I really do find helps, this sort of thing, talking to people in the community and hearing other people's perspective is actually a really great source of strength anyway. But basically, I'll also probably after this I'll turn on Amazon Prime and watch about 6 hours of tennis because I'm a complete tennis nutcase, and I can just sit there and veg out doing that when I really should be doing more productive things. But that gives me the opportunity because I'm alone to just be a bit self-indulgent, and that's my equivalent of a spa trip.
What does mental maintenance look like for you, Eva?
I think taking time to breathe and just taking time out. And I think like this year, Mental Health Awareness Week's theme is loneliness, and that's something I think we should all hold on to and we should all be mindful of, because like we're surrounded by chosen family, we're surrounded by friends, supporters, people we work with, and you can still be lonely. And it's taking that step back and recognizing that can still happen. We can have so much around us physically, but internally we can still be so lonely and feel like we've got no one to talk to. And at those moments, it's recognizing this is happening now. What am I going to do? And whether it's spa trips, tennis, or just taking Boom for a walk, do whatever. It's recognizing, finding that moment, and that when you do, that is a moment for change within yourself personally, because by doing that, you get used to overcoming that loneliness, overcoming those thoughts, and turning something that could be negative into something positive. And that's very much how I would like to view things, that I would like to see the glasses half full rather than half empty. And if there's a way I can put a spin on it, then why not? So yeah, it's vital, especially with imposter syndrome as well. We have so much to deal with in terms of mental health, let alone things like gender dysphoria for me, or anything else that might affect anyone else. It piles on. So it's taking time for you to recognize when that's about to happen and removing yourself from it.
Yeah, I think it's so important. And yeah, I often think people confuse loneliness with the Salvation Army Christmas adverts of like an elderly person in a room alone. Loneliness is actually being in a room full of people and just feeling misunderstood. It's such a often forgotten thing. So I think that's why you know, coming to the end of Mental Health Awareness Week, a day like today is so affirming. We're here, you know, whether you feel it or not, there is an energy, a warmth in this room. And I think really absorbing that, sit in that, have that as today's spa treatment, really feel that energy, whether you believe in that or not, there are ways for you to take something from that. So as you go through the day with breaks, mindfulness moments, I used to be the person that came to this session, turned my camera off and rolled my eyes heavily whilst those things happened. A year and a half on, I sit through them and I absorb them because they have changed how I'm able to show up for me, but also show up for everyone else here. So really take those opportunities. And, you know, mental health isn't a switch. It's not something we fix. It's little things we do every day to keep us going. It's like a car service, an MOT, it's maintenance. So really think about the different things that you do every day for you to push you forwards. I think we're sort of heading towards the end of this panel. We're wrapping things up. We've got a final question that I know in the pre-call, we got a lot of good stuff. So I really want to think about this, and I'm going to come to you first, Geff, because I know your approach is very different to what I would do, and I really want to have that. What can we do as LGBTQI plus leaders to ensure we continue to support our colleagues, committee members, collaborators to feel supportive, feel like they can carry on? And I would love to hear your approach on that, because it was good.
I mean, I could go on and on. I mean, there's because this is
3.5 minutes would be perfect.
I won't. I know. I mean, just because, you know, the point I made at the very start, this is a year-round endeavor. You know, so therefore it's a year-round list of things to be done. And, you know, if you have to pick a few at this point, I would say, and you know, again, putting back my corporate hat, if you like, given that we think corporations need to be the engines of change, just don't accept, you know, anything performative. It's just not good enough. You know, if you're an ally, don't just wear a rainbow lanyard and think that's enough. You know, you basically expect people to step up and do a little bit more. I mean, we just need to help them, right? So basically, you know, people think that you know, just sticking a rainbow on your logo is enough. We need to tell them it's not, but we also, you know, call them out on it, but also explain why it's not enough. We need to help them, give them a bit of education. It's the same thing on a micro basis with allies in the workplace. You know, they really want to know what to do. The most common question I always got when I was at Macquarie is, you know, I really support the cause. What do you want me to do? And you know, that's wonderful to hear that. Actually, people say like, okay, I really would like to be that person who helps you in this process. And it's not just, okay, picking the mug out of the kitchen with the rainbow on it rather than the other one, or wearing the rainbow lanyard. It's actually trying to be somebody who empathizes and steps into the shoes of and helps to create, you know, the massive change. Those are the things in a corporate context. The other thing is really always going to be my, you know, the perhaps more controversial view, which is around engagement. You know, I do think we do need to find ways to engage, however difficult it is for us within the boundaries that we set for ourselves. You know, we have to have our own psychologically safe space, and I love these sorts of events because they remind me of the community that I'm part of, and they give me a sense of well-being and being centered and part of something. But we have to be aware that we shouldn't stay within this self-contained bubble, because otherwise it's only going to stay like that. And at the best, it'll shrink. We need to make sure it expands. And for it to expand, we need to test those boundaries that we can tolerate and try to bring a few more people into this journey with us. You know, by this time next year, I hope that we will not be talking about, you know, the appalling things that J.K. Rowling is saying, or, you know, that sort of thing, which is, you know, we need to move beyond that and try to find ways to bring more people onto our side, where we say, okay, this is not good enough. We're all better together as a solid, you know, a nice solidarity community. The LGB and the T belong together. It's all of us or none of us, as Chloe said earlier. And, you know, that's what I think people should be doing. And, you know, as a takeaway, trying to find ways to do that in the next 6 weeks or so through Pride season.
Yeah, I'm very lucky. I don't actually have to work with many cishet people, but what takeaways for you, Chloe, would you offer to your colleagues, to the people you work around? You know, thinking for you, I see you very much as community impact, very much, these are my people, here is who we're helping right now.
I guess I'm going to demonstrate it by a comment that I saw in the chat. Kudzai, if I've pronounced it wrong, I apologize. It says, sitting here as a masculine presenting lesbian woman who partly grew up in the rural area of Zimbabwe and partly in the neighborhood is quite eye-opening. We all have disparate disparate lived experiences. And so through the lens of, as we're talking about, how do we find self-care? What does mental health and well-being look like? We have to be mindful when we're talking about that through the lens of inclusion, that not everybody shares the same experience of us. And so this is what I try to do in the spaces that I navigate, is to understand that sometimes I might get it wrong. Sometimes I might not always have everything aware and bringing all the different experiences that we need to. And that's why I hope that people like Kudzai will speak up and actually educate me when I get it wrong, to be able to then bring that into the space. So it's about, how do you create somewhere where you can be open and honest with each other, where you can share uncomfortable conversations, but where you first and foremost recognize that you don't have all the answers. And when you don't have all the answers, that's where you start, from a place of education. So I'm the same in and out of the spaces that I navigate, or at least I'm trying to be more authentic to me, to navigate in the same space, corporate spaces, community spaces, advertising spaces, that we have a responsibility as community members, but especially in advertising. We are the holders of people's stories. And so we have a responsibility to make sure that we share those authentically, and that we don't take up space when we're not supposed to. So where we don't share space, where we kind of give space up, or we use the power and privilege that we have to amplify others who have every right to be in that space, but don't always have the same access. So yeah, I think in a roundabout way to answer that question, it's about being and doing, recognizing that sometimes I get it wrong, and it's with the best of intentions, and setting that tone to other people so that they recognize we're doing it together, and it's not an I, but it's a we. Because I think sometimes, and especially in that boundary setting, people come from a place of emotion, and as an empath, having to facilitate a lot of emotions, especially when people feel like they're on the back foot because they're being asked to do something that makes them uncomfortable. How do you then grow from that? So you have to just take out the emotion, find the level playing field, find that shared commonality, and build from that. And that I'm still trying to refine, but I feel like I'm learning that more, again, by being around other people that build that in different areas, different parts of our community, different elements of the spectrum. And it's enriching everything else that I do, whilst not co-opting it or claiming it as my own. So, I'm all of us and none of us isn't mine. I know I've understood that and brought that in, but it's about how you speak to where you got the education and language that you have, and not reinventing it as new, because it's not.
Yeah, nothing is new. We're just reimagining ideas.
Absolutely.
Brilliant. I'd love to hear your thoughts, Eva, on, sort of key takeaways you would urge people to do right now, next week, next month, what that looks like for you.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I would say vision is vital. Have a vision of what you want, what you would like to see, and have a plan. As queer people, we don't stop being queer at the end of June or at the end of September. And, in the same way that a chief exec doesn't stop being a chief exec as soon as they leave the office, person of colour doesn't stop being a person of colour the moment they get into bed and go to sleep. It's 24/7. So we need a vision for what are we going to do today, tomorrow, next month, month after, next year. And we need to invite people to that vision, and and say, this is what I feel like, these are the areas I want to work in. I don't have all the right answers. Help me. There are always going to be overlaps. How can I help you? How can we work together using different strengths and helping to support each other's weaknesses so that we can learn as well? So for me, I love to be super organized, and if things are out of place, I go absolutely nuts. I can't deal with it. So for me, having that structure allows me to kind of plan, and allows me that chance to step back as well, and also recognize that I don't have to have all the answers. I don't have to fulfill that plan today, but as long as I know where I want to go, and that I'm inviting others along with me, sharing the mic, then I'm heading in the right direction.
Yeah, I think that's really important. I think I'd also like to add, identify the gaps, identify the holes in your knowledge, and think, what can I do to plug those gaps? A good example is, you know, going out and buying things that might help you fill those holes. Don't have experience of being non-binary, buy the book of Non-Binary Joy by me, Ben Pechey, something like that. But not just me. There are loads of podcasts, there are loads of books, there are so many resources out there that have been given to us that we want to absorb, you know. So I think the thing about, for me, is in my role as a role model, as the leader, I try every week to find something I didn't know and absorb that. You know, I look back at this book and think, if I wrote that now, I'd do things differently because I've learned, and that's a year on. So really think every day, what don't I know? What can I fill? What can I go out and read? You know, there are loads of things, and it doesn't have to cost. There's, you know, as people like Eva and myself and Chloe as well, we've put it all out there on social media. Like, it's easy, it's digestible. Find ways to fill those gaps. We have done the panel on time, Mayness, on time. We have got 8.5 minutes. If anyone had any questions or would like any points clarified, the time is now. Yeah, please come to the floor. I hate silences, so if you don't talk, I'll just carry on.
Can I just say, following on from what you've just said, Ben, and I'm just mindful of taking up time for Q&As. Well, yeah, when you go out and search for info, when you listen to podcasts, when you read interviews and articles, I would say don't automatically go for the big names. You know, don't go for the big name podcast with millions of followers. I love doing like podcast interviews for the smaller podcasts, because they have, you know, a really raw, honest vision for what they want to convey. Give them a chance, and you know, they're not doing it for the numbers, they're not doing it for a certain gain, they're just doing it because they want to share stories. And sometimes listening to those podcasts is absolutely amazing, because you find some absolute gems that might not otherwise have been heard. So yeah, I really do recommend everyone just go out there and just listen, just read, but don't you know, be mindful of any sort of any unconscious bias. You know, don't always go for the big brands. The little brands are just as good.
I'd add on that and say, like, if there's someone that you admire in the community, have a look at who they're following, and that's how you find a richness. Have a look at who they're following, you know, who they're engaging with, and that becomes a wider part of your community for education.
And reach out to them, right? I mean, most people are receptive, especially at this time of year. If you actually reach out to those people, they would welcome the conversations. You learn so much just from these sort of ad hoc one-off conversations. We've all got plenty of gaps in our knowledge. We've acknowledged that several times. It's a constant challenge to fill it, and it's actually interesting and developmental to do so as well. So do it wherever you can.
Yeah, we've had a question. Do we have any other book recommendations other than mine? I would say Millennial Black by Sophie Williams, a really interesting take on racism in the workplace. I would definitely recommend it. Blows my mind. Anyone else?
I would also say, you know, when it comes to things like books, for example, if you were to go on a publisher's website, there will always be other books you might be interested in. There are algorithms there, kind of, yes, I know they do it for the sales, but those algorithms are based on interest. So if somebody recommends a book, for example, definitely go and buy Ben's book when it's out, but also check out similar books to Ben's. There might be, you know, some hidden gems that you might not have noticed, and use that as a way, you know, make algorithms. They're all over social media, and you know, a lot of people see them as a bad thing, but they can be a really good thing as well, because they could be doing some of the work for you. So don't switch off from those little things to think, oh, it's just a sales technique. It can be quite beneficial too. So yeah, lots of good recommendations. And if you know, you don't want to surf Waterstones, for example, for LGBTQ plus authors, go on the actual publishers, and they themselves will have a whole host of different books, and you'll be able to read the synopsis and just think, is that something I could get into? Maybe push yourself to read a book or listen to a podcast that you might not otherwise do. You know, you might be interested in podcasts where there is humor. Okay, well, challenge yourself. I'm going to listen to a serious podcast that's 60 minutes long, and I'm going to see what I can take from this.
I think that just coming in, I completely agree with what Eva's just saying. The reason I'm not actually kind of coming out with a list of books is because a book is quite a commitment of time, and you know, with the one exception that we should definitely buy Ben's book and read all of that. You know, there are more digestible ways of getting your information through things like podcasts, etc.
Yes.
And it can be quite a challenge to find something which gets everything you want. I mean, I've been amazed at the amount of questions I've been getting the last 3 months. I think probably because of what we achieved when I was at Macquarie is, you know, tell me everything I need to know in like, you know, in like 5 minutes, you know, what's the idiot's guide to getting everything done very easily? What's 101? It doesn't exist. You know, you could read a million books, but, you know, find out what you're really interested in and try to find it in a form which is digestible and meaningful to you. If you've got so much time in your day, you're not going to be able to read a 500-page tome all of the time, you know, so try to think about what it is that will actually get you what you need in perhaps a launching pad way. Then if you're really interested, then you can develop into looking into more specifics. But there are so many things out there that we encourage everyone to learn more about, that, you know, it isn't necessarily just about books. It's, you know, find other mediums that work as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Community is key. I can see the like chat is popping. If there's someone that inspires you, that, you know, you really love who they are and what they represent, and you see yourself, like, pop it in the chat. This is how you share best practice. This is how we learn and grow, because it's also about amplifying those people who are sometimes the least seen. You know, it's about amplifying communities where you can. So props to Ben. Saba's book supporting trans people of color, Travis's new book, None of the Above, blatant plug for Shiver's movie Queer Power of Our, not because I was in it, but it's an absolute stunning masterpiece. And Darius's new movie Goldfish. Like, I'm learning more as a community member by leaning into the communities that I don't know so much about, as we were saying before, like, that isn't a reflection of me. And just how do you bring it into the space? So I'm no different to, I'm not a celeb, I'm no one's, like I said, I'm no one special. I'm not any different to somebody else. I love that you said, like, Eva's, you know, and it's no disrespect to anyone who has a blue tick. I don't have one. I'm still going to do this whether I had one or not. Like, I still want to see other people. So, like, if you're doing something and it's cool, let everybody else know, because this is the one thing I think that is so wonderful about what you're going to take away from today, which is communication and speaking to and with and through each other. We don't do it enough. So actually the richness of building bonds, learning information from each other, and there is no better time than right now to just, you know, share something, share something that you read, like Geff said, so something that you watched, somewhere that you've been, you know, that actually as community really made you see yourself. That's how we all adapt. That's how we all grow, because we're learning and no one's ever finished. Social media is great for that, right? You know, you can achieve a lot with safety. Yeah, with the safety. Yeah. Go on LinkedIn, find some, you know, some cool people to follow on LinkedIn. Lily Jang on LinkedIn. I read her stuff every day. A very cool trans lady. Amazing stuff, just really, really insightful, but punchy. You know, you read it within 2 minutes and it just gets your thoughts moving, and then off you go to research it further yourself if you need to.
Incredible. Oh, what a great first panel. Thank you so much, Chloë, Eva and Geff, for giving your time this morning. That is Be the Change. Over and out. Back to Michael and Maylis. Bye. Have a good day, everyone.